My husband went on a business trip and ended up sharing a room with a female coworker. I was worried about this, so when I asked him, he lied. I checked his phone and found out it was true. I have been married to Neil, a 38-year-old man, for 9 years, and together we have 2 children, Ethan 7 and Lily 4. We first crossed paths in college during our final year. I was pursuing a degree in psychology, while Neil was focused on business studies. Our initial encounter occurred at a party hosted by a mutual friend, and we quickly found ourselves drawn to each other, embarking on a relationship shortly thereafter. After completing our studies, we secured employment in the same city and decided to move in together. Our relationship took a romantic turn 2 years later when Neil proposed during a serene mountain retreat, leading to a quaint wedding ceremony attended by our nearest and dearest. Our marriage is the bedrock of stability, fostered through mutual trust, transparent communication, and shared principles. We've navigated numerous hurdles, from early financial constraints to the pressures of parenting. Despite these challenges, we've maintained a united front, continually supporting one another and collaboratively solving any issues that arise. Neil has carved out a successful career in pharmaceutical sales, a role he has dedicated himself to for over 6 years. His job demands a great deal of him, often requiring extended hours to achieve his sales targets. His commitment has resulted in 2 promotions since he started at the company. While I am immensely proud of his accomplishments, I am occasionally concerned about the imbalance between his professional and personal life. Concurrently, I work as a part-time school counselor, a position that affords me the flexibility to spend more time with Ethan and Lily. Neil's career necessitates sporadic travel for conferences, training sessions, or crucial client meetings, typically lasting between 3 to 5 days every few months. This arrangement has worked well for us. Neil remains in constant contact during his trips, ensuring to call each night and stay connected via text throughout the day. My trust in Neil has never wavered, even when he travels without us. Last month, he attended a week-long industry conference in Chicago, an event he anticipated eagerly for the networking and educational opportunities it promised in his field. I assisted him with his packing, making sure to include the tie I gifted him on our last anniversary, playfully reminding him that it was his lucky charm. This foundation of deep trust and partnership has allowed us to thrive as a couple, facing life's ups and downs with a unified spirit and a commitment to our family's happiness. The initial days of Neil's trip unfolded routinely. He called each evening, his voice weary yet filled with excitement about the conference. He shared details about the compelling presentations he attended and the new acquaintances he made. Our conversations also touched on our children, and he took keen interest in my day-to-day activities. Everything appeared perfectly normal until the third day marked a distinct shift. Suddenly, Neil's calls became erratic and noticeably brief. Whenever we managed to speak, he seemed distracted and hurried to conclude the calls. I initially dismissed my concerns, attributing his changed demeanor to the busy schedule of the conference and possible evening engagements with clients. However, my assumptions were challenged during a brief call late on the third day when Neil revealed unexpected news. With a tone of fatigue and slight nervousness, Neil explained there had been a confusion with the hotel bookings. The city was hosting a large convention, leading to an overbooking at the hotel. As a result, his company decided to double up accommodations, pairing Neil with a colleague. He casually mentioned that his roommate for the remainder of the trip would be Natalie, a 29-year-old female coworker. His words left me momentarily speechless. Once I regained my composure, I asked him to clarify his statement, half hoping I had misunderstood. But Neil repeated the same details. He and Natalie were sharing a room under a purely professional pretext with 2 separate beds. He emphasized the temporary nature of this arrangement, assuring it was only for the last 3 nights of the trip. My mind raced as I processed this information, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I questioned why he hadn't informed me immediately after learning of the rooming situation. Neil's response was nonchalant. He believed it wasn't a significant issue and didn't want to cause me unnecessary concern. His casual dismissal of the scenario as normal struck a nerve. Struggling to maintain a calm tone, I posed a hypothetical question to Neil, asking how he would feel if the roles were reversed and I had to share a room with a male colleague during a business trip. Taken aback by the comparison, he paused before responding that his complete trust in me meant he would not object to such an arrangement. Neil's reassurance did little to alleviate my concerns. I expressed to him that it wasn't merely a matter of trust, but also of respecting our marriage and maintaining appropriate boundaries with colleagues. My voice quavered with emotion as I conveyed this, But Neil sighed, suggesting that I was overreacting. He reiterated that the arrangement was strictly professional and that I had no reason to worry. We ended our conversation soon after, with Neil promising to call the next day. Once I hung up, the tears I had been fighting back began to flow freely, as feelings of hurt, anger, confusion, and fear overwhelmed me. Unlike my usual self, not prone to jealousy, this scenario struck a different chord. It wasn't just the fear of infidelity, but the apparent disregard for my feelings and what I considered necessary marital boundary. That night was restless. My mind was haunted by visions of Neil and Natalie together in a hotel room. In moments of calm, I tried to recall the strength of our relationship and Neil's consistent thoughtfulness and devotion. Yet these memories were tainted by his recent dismissal of my worries, causing the old fears to resurface. The days that followed were a fog. Neil's subsequent calls were sparse and brief, with him seeming in a hurry to finish our conversation. He never mentioned the room-sharing situation again, and my hurt and confusion prevented me from bringing it up. To distract myself, I focused intently on caring for our children and my work, doing anything to keep my mind occupied. When Neil finally returned home, I expected him to immediately address the incident. Contrarily, he behaved as if the episode had never occurred. He unpacked, spent time playing with the kids, and settled back into his routine as if nothing was amiss. He showed me affection, yet he avoided any discussion of Natalie or the circumstances that had upset me so deeply. Over the past week, I've been trying to sort through my tumultuous feelings. On one side, I want to trust Neil's assurances that nothing inappropriate occurred. He has never given me reason to doubt him before, and his role as a loving husband and father has always been evident. I reminisced about our beautiful moments together, our romantic outings, memorable family holidays, and how he supported me through my struggle with postpartum depression following Lily's birth. Yet, despite these fond memories and our history of trust, I couldn't shake the discomfort stirred by this incident. It was a stark reminder of how delicate trust can be and how quickly feelings of security in a relationship can be undermined by actions perceived as inconsiderate or dismissive. This experience has left me in a state of uncertainty about how to communicate my ongoing discomfort without reigniting conflict, all the while longing for reassurance that our marriage can regain its former sense of mutual respect and understanding. Neil has always been the cornerstone of my life, providing support and partnership in every aspect, yet recently, I've been unable to shake the feeling that something is amiss. His initial failure to inform me about sharing a room, his dismissive response to my concerns, and his avoidance of the topic since returning have all raised serious doubts in my mind. Reflecting on the early days of our relationship, I remember how we prided ourselves on being open and transparent. I find myself questioning when and why this dynamic shifted. I've attempted to discuss these feelings with Neil since his return, only to be met with indifference. He dismisses my concerns, suggesting I am overreacting and accusing me of not trusting him. This feels like a manipulative tactic to shift the blame onto me, leaving me confused and questioning my own reactions. Am I overreacting, or are my worries justified? I don't want to unfairly accuse Neil of anything, yet I can't help but fear for our family's future if there is more to his story than he admits. I've contemplated discussing this with my sister, seeking an external perspective, but I hesitate to involve family and potentially strain their view of Neil over what may be a misunderstanding. I also thought about reaching out to Neil's colleagues for more insights, but that feels like a breach of his trust. The challenge remains: how can I communicate my feelings to Neil in a manner that compels him to take them seriously? I need him to understand that regardless of the actual events, his handling of the situation has deeply hurt me. The question of how to rebuild trust and move forward looms large, leaving me at a critical crossroads in our relationship. It's been 2 weeks since I first shared these concerns, and I'd like to update everyone on the progress with Neil. I am grateful for the support and advice from this community, which emboldened me to address the issue more assertively. A few days after my initial post, I decided it was imperative to have a candid conversation with Neil about the hotel incident. After Ethan and Lily were tucked into bed, a question from Neil explained that he hadn't mentioned mentoring Natalie earlier because he considered it a routine part of his job. However, this revelation only fueled my suspicion about the nature of their relationship. Challenging him further, I posed a hypothetical scenario: how he would feel if I were mentoring a younger male colleague and ended up sharing a hotel room with him on a business trip. His prolonged silence before he finally conceded that he would be uncomfortable with such an arrangement marked a turning point. It was the first time he appeared to grasp my perspective genuinely. His acknowledgement led to an apology and a promise for greater transparency going forward. Neil suggested introducing me to Natalie and committed to keeping me more informed about his interactions at work. He also proposed that we seek couples counseling to enhance our communication. While these gestures were reassuring, I remained conflicted internally. His support through personal and family crises, his involvement as a father, and the tender moments we shared, all these memories made me want to believe him and move past this. Yet, doubts lingered, exacerbated by the revelation that he had been mentoring Natalie for months without once mentioning her. The omission added complexity to our situation, making me question what else might have been kept from me. In a bid for clarity and space, I decided to temporarily distance myself. I called my sister Claire, seeking refuge and a sounding board in someone I trusted implicitly. Neil was visibly upset by my decision to stay with Claire for a few days, but I needed this time to reflect independently. During my time at Claire's, I pondered our relationship and my own suppressed feelings. I realized how frequently I had prioritized Neil's comfort over my own, often smoothing over disagreements and justifying his actions to others. This pattern, I recognized, had to shift. I needed to assert my feelings and perspectives more firmly, ensuring they were neither overlooked nor minimized in our interactions. This time apart was crucial not just for evaluating the incident with Natalie, but for reassessing the dynamics of our entire relationship. I'm beginning to understand that the pattern of behavior we've fallen into is unhealthy for both Neil and me. As part of grappling with the entire scenario, I've considered reaching out to Natalie directly. I'm curious to hear her perspective and see if it aligns with what Neil has shared. However, I'm conflicted about this approach, fearing it could exacerbate the situation or create additional tension for Neil at work. During this introspective period, Claire has been an invaluable source of support. She has listened to me without judgment and has encouraged me to look after my own well-being. Her reminders of my strength and capability have been a beacon, helping to illuminate aspects of myself that I had let fade over the years. Still, I'm torn over my next steps, especially when thinking about the impact on our children, Ethan and Lily. The thought of their confusion and distress at a potential separation weighs heavily on me, yet I also recognize that the recent revelations have exposed deeper cracks in our relationship that may not be easily repaired. The issues we've uncovered, Neil's lack of communication, his dismissal of my feelings, and his secrecy, pose significant challenges. These are not just minor hiccups, but fundamental breaches that call into question whether they can genuinely be resolved. As I contemplate the future, I wonder if couples counseling might be a path worth exploring to address these foundational issues. Seeking advice seems the next logical step. I am considering whether to give Neil another chance and whether engaging in couples counseling could help bridge the gaps between us. Additionally, the idea of speaking with Natalie remains on the table, though I am still unsure if it would help or hinder our healing process. After spending time at my sister's, absorbing the advice and support from friends and family, and reflecting deeply, I returned home to confront these issues head-on with Neil. The home that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed starkly different, almost as if the joyful family photos adorning our walls were taunting me with memories of better time. I found Neil in his home office, a room that symbolized his dedication to our family, but now felt more like a representation of the growing distance between us. As I sit here in my sister's guest room, scrolling through a family photo of us at the beach, smiling, seemingly carefree, I am filled with both hope and doubt. Can we return to that state of shared happiness and trust? The path forward remains uncertain, and while I yearn for a resolution that can mend our bonds, the reality of our situation leaves me questioning if that is still possible. Meanwhile, I deeply appreciate the continued support from this community. Your insights have been a crucial lifeline through these turbulent times. I confronted Neil about the need for more than just verbal apologies to restore trust between us. I insisted on full transparency regarding his interactions with Natalie and any future business trips. Though Neil hesitated, he eventually acquiesced, showing me all his communications with Natalie, emails, text messages, and their exchanges on the company's internal messaging system. Most of their correspondence revolved around work topics like projects and schedules. However, certain messages stood out, not for their explicit content, but for a certain level of friendliness and familiarity that troubled me. They shared musical tastes and book recommendations, exchanged office inside jokes, and engaged in what could only be described as mild flirtatious banter. This casual intimacy reminded me painfully of the early playful exchanges between Neil and me, highlighting a part of our connection that now seemed to be shared with someone else. Motivated by Neil's suggestion and my need to understand the nature of their relationship better, I agreed to meet Natalie. We arranged a lunch at a cafe near Neil's office with him in attendance. Natalie was undoubtedly polite and professional, discussing their collaborative projects with a bright enthusiasm. Yet her excessive praise of Neil's mentorship struck me as forced, amplifying my discomfort. Throughout the meal, their seamless interactions and shared laughter over familiar jokes suggested a closeness that went beyond a typical mentor-mentee relationship. On the drive home, the car felt oppressively small, a stark contrast to the joy it once held during family outings. I shared my unease with Neil about the apparent closeness he shared with Natalie. I made it clear that while I had no desire to dictate the terms of his professional relationships, the intimacy of their interactions was more than I was comfortable with. This conversation was necessary, yet heavy, laden with the weight of our strained trust. I needed Neil to understand that while professional camaraderie was normal, the type of rapport he had with Natalie was stepping into a zone that felt threatening to the security of our relationship. During our discussion about his relationship with Natalie, I suggested that Neil consider maintaining a professional distance from her. This proposal ignited a fiery debate. Neil accused me of being controlling and insisted that my insecurities were threatening his career. He argued that mentoring Natalie was a crucial part of his job responsibilities and that distancing himself could potentially damage his professional reputation. Neil's firm refusal to alter his working relationship with Natalie, coupled with his assertion that I needed to trust him for our marriage to succeed, left me stunned. This shift from his previously remorseful demeanor to one of defensiveness made me question if there was more to their relationship than he had admitted. The Neil I encountered during this argument was almost unrecognizable compared to the understanding and cooperative partner I knew. He seemed unwilling to empathize with my feelings or consider a compromise, which was out of character for the man I had married. This new defensive and almost aggressive side of Neil alarmed me, driving me to take a step I now regret. In a moment of desperation and seeking clarity, I checked his phone while he was in the shower, fully aware that it was an invasion of his privacy. What I discovered on Neil's phone deepened my concerns. There were text messages between him and Natalie that he had deleted, which I was able to recover from a backup. These messages were not overtly romantic, but they carried a tone of personal and flirtatious banter that went beyond what Neil had previously shown me. They shared reflections on their time in the hotel room during the conference, appreciating having someone to talk to at the end of each day. The texts included inside jokes and moments they had experienced together, details Neil had never mentioned to me. One particular exchange was especially alarming. Natalie expressed how much she missed their late-night chats, lamenting that the office felt dull without them. Neil's response was equally suggestive, hinting at a longing for another conference where they could enjoy each other's company again. These discoveries painted a picture of their relationship that was far more intimate than I had been led to believe. When Neil emerged from the shower, I couldn't contain my emotions any longer. I confronted him with the evidence of the deleted texts. Initially, he reacted with anger over my invasion of his privacy, but as I began to read some of the messages aloud, his anger shifted to shame. Neil's demeanor crumbled as the reality of what I had found set in. His breakdown marked a turning point in our confrontation. It was clear that the boundary between his professional and personal interactions with Natalie had blurred significantly, leading to consequences that now jeopardized the trust and stability of our marriage. This revelation forced us both to face the serious implications of his actions, not just for our relationship, but for our family as a whole. Neil's admission that he and Natalie had developed a deeper connection during the Chicago trip than he initially disclosed was a devastating blow. He insisted that their relationship had not become physical, yet he acknowledged that he had enjoyed her admiration and company more than was appropriate. Neil explained that feelings of being underappreciated both at home and work made Natalie's attention particularly gratifying. He pleaded for forgiveness and offered drastic measures to restore our trust, including severing non-essential contact with Natalie and even changing jobs if necessary to save our marriage. His tears and reminders of our shared history and the family we had built together underscored his desperation for another chance. However, the damage to our trust was profound, and I felt overwhelmed by a sense of betrayal. Neil's earlier attempts to reassure me now felt hollow in the light of his confession. The man I had known as a dedicated and honest husband and father now seemed like a stranger. In response, I asked Neil to move out temporarily, deciding he should stay with a friend while I took time to consider our future. This decision was heart-wrenching, particularly as it confused and upset our children, intensifying my emotional turmoil. Ethan's innocent question about whether his father had done something wrong left me at a loss for words, highlighting the impact of our marital issues on the kid. As I pondered over our next steps, I was torn between a desire to salvage our marriage for the sake of our family and the stark realization that Neil's betrayal might be insurmountable. The deception, his emotional involvement with another woman, and his apparent disregard for my feelings weighed heavily on me. Simultaneously, I grappled with feelings of anger towards myself for dismissing my initial instincts about Neil's changed behavior. I had allowed my commitment to keeping our family together to suppress my doubts, a decision I now questioned deeply. This reflection prompted a broader consideration of my own needs and how to regain my independence and self-esteem, which had been eroded by this ordeal. Faced with these complex emotions and decisions, I am contemplating seeking professional advice. I am considering whether marriage counseling could possibly mend our relationship or whether it might be prudent to consult a divorce lawyer. Above all, my priority is to shield our children from further distress and to navigate this challenging period with their best interests at heart. As I reflect on my next steps, I am also focused on rebuilding my self-worth and autonomy, essential components of my personal well-being that have suffered during this ordeal. I would greatly appreciate any advice on how to approach these decisions, particularly from those who have navigated similar challenges. Feeling both lost and broken, yet striving to stay resilient for my children has defined my recent days. They depend on me more than ever, compelling me to maintain strength despite the turmoil inside. 2 months have passed since my last update, and during this period, I've navigated through deep introspection and numerous discussions with Neil, ultimately deciding to file for divorce. This decision was not made lightly. It stemmed from recognizing that the trust between us had been shattered beyond repair. The incident with Natalie unearthed underlying issues of respect and honesty that seemed insurmountable. In the weeks that followed Neil's admission, we earnestly tried to mend our relationship. We participated in couples counseling, and though Neil appeared sincerely regretful, changing jobs to avoid Natalie, engaging more with our children, and showing greater attentiveness towards me, the constant doubts shadowed every interaction. Anxiety surged each time he used his phone or arrived home late, painting every ordinary situation with suspicion. The breaking point came upon discovering Neil had resumed contact with Natalie under the pretext of tying up loose ends at work. The fact that he did not inform me of this contact felt like a renewed betrayal. It underscored a painful reality. Despite our efforts, the foundational trust we once shared had eroded completely. This realization propelled me to contact a lawyer and initiate divorce proceedings. Neil responded with pleas and promises, even offering to quit his job as a testament to his commitment, but it felt like a desperate attempt to salvage what was already lost. For me, the decision was clear, albeit painful. Too much damage had been done, and a return to the trust we once enjoyed seemed unattainable. Navigating this transition has been particularly challenging when addressing our children. We have endeavored to explain the situation with care and honesty, emphasizing that while our family dynamics are changing, our love for them remains unwavering. This reassurance is crucial as we strive to ensure that they feel secure and loved despite the shifts in their familiar world. The children, especially Ethan, are finding it hard to cope. He senses the gravity of the situation but lacks the maturity to fully understand it, while Lily frequently asks when Daddy is returning, a question that shatters my heart each time. Neil has now moved out permanently, and we are navigating the complexities of co-parenting, striving to maintain civility for our children's sake. In an effort to heal and regain my sense of self, I have begun individual therapy. This step is helping me process the tumult of recent events and rebuild my self-esteem. On a related note, I learned that Natalie has been transferred to another department at work. Whether this was a decision by Neil or the company doesn't concern me anymore. My focus has shifted entirely to rebuilding my own life. I'm taking strides towards personal growth and rediscovery. I've rekindled friendships that were neglected, taken up painting, a long postponed passion, and I'm even contemplating furthering my education in counseling. The prospect of enhancing my career and rediscovering my interest outside of my previous role as a wife fills me with both trepidation and excitement. There are days when doubts creep in, and I find myself reminiscing about the life Neil and I shared. However, recalling the betrayal and disrespect quickly reaffirms my decision. I am determined to show my children the importance of self-respect and the courage to reject poor treatment, even from those we love deeply. I extend my heartfelt thanks to this community for your unwavering support and thoughtful advice throughout this challenging period. Your encouragement has been a beacon of hope and strength. For those who might be facing similar challenges, remember the importance of respect and honesty in any relationship. Trust your instincts and don't hesitate to advocate for your own well-being. This marks my final update. As I turn the page on this chapter, I look forward to what lies ahead. Though the journey remains daunting, the prospect of a new beginning is imbued with hope. Thank you all once again. Take care and cherish your worth.